Okay, guys, so I want to go over how to figure out the area in the normal distribution if you have a z-score that's something other than like a whole number. Like some of the z-scores we did were like, what if you're one standard deviation above the mean? Okay, so like if z was 1 here, then the question is what would the area be here in the yellow between the mean? I don't know why they put 0 here because this is called a standard normal distribution, but this is just, think of this as whatever the mean is or the average, and this is usually given to you. Okay, so if z was 1 here, then we could just look at our the typical table we use, and so let me actually just pull that up here. Where did I put it? Sorry. So remember, if we're one standard deviation away from the mean, then the amount of people between that is 34.1%. Okay, so and if we were if our z-score was 2 or 2.00, then we would be 2 standard deviations away, and so it would just be 34.1 plus 13.6%, which is 47.7%. Okay, and so on and so forth. If you had -1 standard deviations away from the mean, then you would know that this area right here is 34.1%, and so on and so forth. Okay, but what if you get something like let's do like 1.52 standard deviations away. So 1.52 standard deviations is going to put you about, I don't know, maybe about right here. So you're a little more than halfway in between 1 and 2 standard deviations. And so the question is, what is the amount or percent of data here in between the mean and 1.52 standard deviations away? And what you have to do is you have to use one of these tables that they give us, okay? I can tell you right now, I mean, it's going to be more, obviously it's going to be more than 34.1%, but it's not going to be 47.7%. So we need to look this up in a table, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Okay, so if your z-score is at a 1.52, then you're going to have to use this table, okay? And this table's on the TaskStream page. So I would recommend pulling this up and looking at it after you go over this video. So, okay, here's how this works. Right here is your this is the first part of your z-score, okay? And this is the second part of your z-score, this little thing up here. This part right here gives you the first couple decimals. So like for our 1.52, the z, we would go down to 1.5, okay? And then the 2, so 1.52, the 2 comes from over here, okay? So this is the 2 there in our 1.52, okay? Which makes sense. I mean, you have 1.52, okay? So what you need to do is look over 1.5, and then you need to scroll over until you get to the 2 column, okay? So here's the 2 column. Here's the 1.5. So those two come together right here at this decimal, okay? So 0.4357. What that means is that 43.57% of your data falls between the mean and a z-score of 1.52, okay? So if you were 1.52 standard deviations away, what that means is that 43.57% of your data falls in that range, okay? Now, inevitably what ends up happening is people ask, what about negative z-scores? Because this only gives positive z-scores. And I'll be honest with you, some tables actually do give negative z-scores, which is fine. I think they're a little more confusing than this table. I think this table is pretty straightforward. I really like this table. So this is the one I use. But what if you have a negative z-score? What if your z-score is negative 1.52? Well, it is the exact same thing. If you have a negative z-score, just look it up like it's positive. Okay, so here's your negative z-score, 43.57%. And what this is telling me is that 43.57% of the data falls between your z-score of negative 1.52 and the mean. So if you just took this yellow area and just reflected it and put it over here, it's telling you the exact same thing. Now, this does make a slight difference. So, like, what if I asked you, what percentile are you if you have a z-score of 1.52? And when I ask what percentile you are, that means what percentage of people score below you. Okay, so if this yellow area here is 43.57%, then what this tells me is that I scored higher than this 43.57% of people, and also everybody left of the mean. Okay, which brings up a question: what percentage of people are left of the mean? Well, if your data is perfectly normally distributed, this would be 50%. So you always have 50% to the left and 50% to the right. And this makes sense that this yellow area takes up 43.57 of the total 50% under this whole curve over here. Okay, so the answer to that question would be that I would be in the 93.57 percentile if I had a z-score of 1.52. Okay, because you take 43.57 and add it to 50, and that'll give you the percentile. Now, what if you have a z-score of negative 1.52? Obviously, if you're right here, you're not going to be higher than 93.57% of the data. So what you want to do is figure out that right here is 43.57%, right? And then what you're going to do is, well, there are a couple different ways you can do it. My personal preference is to say, okay, this means that I am below 93.57% of the population if I'm right here, right? Because you have 43.57 here, and then you have 50 all over on the right side. So 93.57% of people are above you if you're right here with a z-score of negative 1.52. If that many people are above you, what percentage of people are below you? Well, just do 100% minus whatever that is. So in this case, if we did 100% minus 93.57%, we would get 6.43%. So if you have a z-score of negative 1.52, then your percentile rank would be 6.43%, because all we did was we did the 43.57, which we got from the table, added it to the 50 over here, and we decided, hey, I must be below that percentage of people, and then just take 100% minus that number, okay? So that's how you use z-scores to figure out percentages in the table, okay? So I hope that helps.